In the wake of driver complaints about the safety implications of excessive car bouncing, F1's governing body has introduced a raft of measures aimed at trying to eradicate the phenomenon. It plans to introduce an aerodynamic oscillation metric, AOM, for the Belgian Grand Prix that teams will not be allowed to exceed. And to ensure that the AOM applies to all competitors equally, the FIA is also introducing measures that will outlaw tricks some teams are understood to have played in flexing their floors and planks for better performance. While some teams have welcomed the FIA's intervention, others have been annoyed at its actions and believe the governing body should have no right to dictate how teams set up their cars. Furthermore, questions have been asked about whether or not the FIA needs to take any action on porpoising now that the problem has not been a factor in recent races. The matter was discussed at a meeting of F1's Technical Advisory Committee, TAC, where the FIA were made clear that its stance on the matter was unchanged despite team criticisms. In a statement, the FIA said it was absolutely resolute that the porpoising was a significant safety matter, so there should be no change of direction with its plans. It is the responsibility and the prerogative of the FIA to intervene for safety matters, and the reason the regulations allow such measures to be taken is precisely to allow decisions to be taken without being influenced by the competitive position each team may find themselves in, it said. While the issue of cars bouncing has not been prevalent in recent races, the FIA believe that the factor has been more down to track characteristics, and there are venues coming up on the calendar like Budapest, Spa and Singapore where it could be more of a problem. The FIA also feels that as teams pile on improvements for their 2023 cars, that the increased downforce could trigger greater problems next year. That is why it is sticking to a two-point plan in a bid to try and rid the sport of the problem. From the Belgian Grand Prix, the FIA has reaffirmed it is sticking a two-pronged attack in a bid to sort the issue. The AOM will become mandatory from the Spa weekend, but teams will be able to use the metric from next weekend's French GP to better understand it. Also, the FIA will mandate a stiffening of the skid blocks in the planks of cars after it emerged teams have made them movable to avoid being worn away. There will also be changes to the way the planks are measured too, to ensure that teams don't use the disappearing skid blocks to pass post-race checks, having worn down other areas of the floor. The FIA also outlined, following input from the teams, changes to the technical regulations from 2023. These are a 25mm raising of the floor edges, a raising of the underfloor diffuser throat, and the introduction of a more stringent lateral floor deflection tests and the use of a more accurate sensor to quantify aerodynamic oscillation. All of the above measures are to be submitted urgently to the FIA's World Motorsport Council for ratifications, so teams can get to work on revised 2023 designs. The issues with porpoising and how some teams have gotten around the issue is something that Mercedes team principal Toto Wolff has been very outspoken on. However, Ferrari team principal Mattia Binotto said last weekend porpoising was not a subject in Silverstone. It has not been here a subject in Austria for any of us. I'm pretty sure it will not be in the next two races. It's an issue that Binotto has regularly dismissed, even going as far to say the FIA are creating a big noise for nothing. Following the race in Azerbaijan, numerous drivers complained of back pains and headaches caused by the severe bouncing of their cars due to the highly bumpy nature of the Baku City circuit. Binotto said porpoising is something we need to tackle for the future, to try and do that and maybe need to do that through technical changes. Porpoising in Canada, has not been such an issue. It's track related. As the cars are developed, this will develop as well. But it's a technical issue that needs to be discussed and improved. How do we do that? It's an open question. Toto Wolff has reasserted his belief that some teams are breaking the current FIA regulations regarding porpoising. The Mercedes Supremo believes that some teams are circumventing the rules by finding a way to make specific bits of the floor flex on their cars. Mercedes have been particularly badly affected by the new technical regulations brought in for this season that has seen a return of ground effect. This has also coincided with some teams, particularly the Silver Arrows, struggling from porpoising, a phenomenon where the cars suffers from high velocity bouncing at high speeds, which causes a loss of downforce and hence a loss of performance. The FIA have hence decided to implement implement more stringent checks to ensure teams are not trying to gain an unfair advantage. Wolff has been one of the most outspoken team bosses on the issue, given Mercedes' struggles this year, and he has reaffirmed his belief that other teams are flouting the rules. Some teams have skids that actually disappear when the car hits the ground, the German told reporters after the Austrian Grand Prix. The reason for skids is that they are the limitation of how much wear of the board you can have. If the skid can disappear miraculously into the floor, that is clearly against the regulations. Then the second thing is there is a plank that can deflect, or that basically also moves away more than the tolerance should be. The tolerance is 1 millimeter. If a plank moves away many more millimeters up into the car, obviously you gain some performance there too. However, Red Bull chief Christian Horner has hit back against the claims of his fierce rival, believing he could be referring to their car. The drinks manufacturer has enjoyed a much more successful season than the Silver Arrows and have not suffered from porpoising. They currently sit top of the Constructors' Championship, over 100 points clear of Mercedes, while current world champion Max Verstappen leads the drivers' standings. That's total rubbish, the 48-year-old told reporters. I think we're getting issues mixed up here. Maybe he's referring to, I don't know, cars that are around him at the moment. I have no idea, but I have absolutely no issues or concerns on our floor. The FIA's efforts to restrict the porpoising of F1 cars has provoked criticism from several teams, notably Red Bull, since they began when the first technical directive was announced ahead of the Canadian Grand Prix. Horner pointed out the porpoising several drivers suffered from had lessened at Silverstone, a much smoother circuit than several previous venues. The technical directive is obviously focused on this bouncing, or the porpoising, which only certain cars have struggled with. I think it's due for further discussion in the technical working group, which is the correct forum for it. Obviously, as we saw at Silverstone, no cars were really affected by it. So the argument being, is it the duty of the competitor to make sure their car is safe, or is it the duty of the FIA to ensure that the competitive run their car safely? Porpoising issues were not the only item on the agenda last week, as Formula One team bosses met with the FIA president Mohammed Ben Sulayem to discuss other plans and proposals. Red Bull Racing reportedly applied for new constructor status during the meeting, much to the dismay of Ferrari's Matteo Binotto and Mercedes' Toto Wolff. This would have given the team a much bigger budget than its direct rivals, according to La Gazzetta dello Sport. Agreement was reached on a number of agenda items, including the new rules to limit porpoising in 2022. However, the team bosses have not yet agreed on the engine regulations that will come into effect in 2026. An important issue concerns a possible competitive advantage of new manufacturers. The current constructors do not like the idea of a new engine immediately dominating the field as Mercedes did in 2014. Ferrari and Mercedes are keeping a close eye on Red Bull Racing, which may be able to take advantage of the rules for new constructors. Christian Horner's team has applied for this status as it has never produced engines before, and its dedicated Milton Keynes department is just starting out. It would give Red Bull more freedom in developing its power unit than rival teams, who will also have to respect an engine budget cap from next season. Furthermore, Ferrari and Mercedes are worried about the arrival of Porsche, which are expected to announce a partnership with Red Bull Racing. That announcement has yet to be made as talks between the teams are still ongoing, but the rival teams also see it as a potential competitive advantage for Red Bull. The Austrian team would theoretically have a double budget, as it would be developing its own engine as well as one in partnership with Porsche. In addition, the teams want to see a guarantee that Porsche and Audi will not cooperate to circumvent the budget cap. To ensure this, limits to be determined should be included to the technical regulations. The current debate over porpoising is likely to continue to be a contentious talking point when the Formula One circus rolls into the Circuit Paul Ricard for the French Grand Prix next weekend.